right, welcome back to the Game or Die podcast for the next episode, episode 26. Oh boy, I have been up to a lot this last month or so, and I've been playing a stupid amount of video games. I played through, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is I played through all of Hollow Knight. Now, if you don't know what Hollow Knight is, it's basically a game in the vein of Castlevania or Metroid, classically known as a Metroidvania, but I hate that genre because it's not a genre. It's just talking about two separate games smashed together. Like, that's not a genre. You don't say, oh, I went to see a movie. Oh, what type of movie was it? Oh, a Casablanca-like? Or a Citizen Kane-like? No, you don't say that. You don't say, it's like this, so that's its own genre. You just say, it's this type of genre. So I always talked about these types of games as platforming exploration-based with some backtracking, because that's exactly what this game is. And holy crap, is it good. I initially hated this game. I remember when it came out, and everyone talked about it for like a week or two and then just stopped talking about it. And then like a year and a half later, almost 2 years later, everyone started playing this game. And that's kind of when I played it. I somehow bought the game. I don't even know how I got my hands on this game, but I somehow bought this game and just didn't even know it because my friend Sean, I love Sean. He knows me extremely well, and he knows the games that I like, even though I might not know that I like them. So he kept talking to me about this game. He's like, man, you should play Hollow Knight. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. And I was like, I'll play it someday maybe or whatever. But I've never been into those types of games before. When Hollow Knight first came out, I saw a quick look of it and I immediately wrote it off because I don't like those types of games. But especially after last year, playing through the Castlevania series and playing through Symphony of the Night and playing through Bloodstained, I started appreciating that type of genre a lot more. So what I did is Sean kept bugging me about it. He's like, man, you gotta just play Hollow Knight. So I played about 20 minutes of it, and the atmosphere is so dark and dreary. It is just a kind of upsetting, atmosphere to that game that I didn't really like it right off the bat. I kind of bounced off of it very quickly. I played 20 minutes of it, and I went, this isn't what I want. And especially because from what I've heard from people, it's so hard, it's difficult. And I was like, man, I hate those types of games where they're difficult and brutally hard just to be hard. There's no rhyme or reason for it other than the developer said, hey, we want to make a hard game. And I don't like that type of development style. I don't like that type of game. Make it fun, make it enjoyable, make it challenging. I love a challenge. I don't want to breeze through games. When I breeze through games, I don't have a fun time. Mostly. But when there is challenge there, I love it. But when it moves into the realm of, hey, we just made a brutal, hard game because that's what the NES stuff was. When that resurgence came around and back in like 2011, 2012, I started really hating that type of game because I lived through the NES era, I lived through the original classic Ninja Gaiden games and stuff like that. And I always call it Ninja Gaiden hard when a game is hard for the sake of being hard. Ninja Gaiden prided itself on that type of gameplay style, and I don't like that. So I initially bounced off of this game and I was off-put by everyone's comments of saying it was super hard. But God bless Sean, man. He kept, just every once in a while just pushing me and reminding me, hey, Hollow Knight is really good. And I kept saying, I'll get to it. Well, the last couple of months have been, so there's been a lot of free time. So I sat down and I said, you know what? I've got really nothing else to play. So I'll give Hollow Knight another shot because I do want to talk to Sean about it. I love talking to Sean about these games that he makes me play because he knows me, and especially after I played through Ori and Ori 2, I wanted something in the same type of vein, that same gameplay style. So I loaded up Hollow Knight again, and I was like, you know what? It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'll just start playing. And I loved this game. I really did. I really enjoyed my time with it because at the outset, you start this game and it's dark and dreary and it's just an unenjoyable world to live in. It's kind of gross and grotesque, but in a really nice way. The art style in this game is fantastic. The animation of all the characters are very fluid, and it doesn't push its story on you like a lot of games. There's a lot of games where they go out of their way to over-explain stuff, and this game doesn't do that. No, there is a fine line between over-explaining and under-explaining. And this game does under-explain a little bit at the outset, but there are characters and NPCs in the world that kind of give you a little bit of flavor text, a little bit of character to the world itself. And you start understanding why this world is the way it is and what happened to it, kind of like Ori. I think Ori does a way better job of it. But Hollow Knight is something really special. It's a game that you can pick up and play for 20, 30, 45 minutes, put it down, come back to it later, and still enjoy it. You can get those little bite-sized chunks, or you can do what I did and just play it for hours and hours on end. And because I did kind of both of those, sometimes I would spend all night playing up until like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then sometimes in the middle of the day when I wasn't working, I'd load it up for like half an hour, turn it off, go make lunch, come back to it for another hour or so, and just play for, just different time frames. And it was still the same fun experience over and over again. The combat is really nice too because it's in the same style as Ori 2, where it's weapon-based. It's not just projectiles. You have a couple projectiles, but you are more, using your sword or your nail to kill all the enemies and stuff like that. They have patterns, you learn them. But the chunk of the game that I really enjoyed was exploration. I love exploring in games ever since, it's not ever since, but one of the things that I've always picked out whenever I talk about exploration in games is going to sound weird. Stay with me. San Francisco Rush. San Francisco Rush is a racing game, and it's an arcade racer too. So it's not very simulation-based. It doesn't have a lot of nuance in the racing part of it, but they went out of their way to make you explore the world in this racing game by using shortcuts and hidden passages and unlockable keys, basically. You collect these keys to unlock cars and tracks. So, and I kind of been playing a lot of San Francisco Rush, but every time I talk about exploration in games, I am always reminded of San Francisco Rush because you explored in that game, and I love exploring. So Hollow Knight does have that in spades. The world is so big and vast, and it takes a long time to traverse and unlock. And there were some times that I did get frustrated when I got lost. And this was a big talking point when I heard about this game years ago, is basically you are blind exploring. You are just walking from screen to screen, room to room, area to area, and you have a map, but the map doesn't get filled out by where you explore. Your map gets filled out first by having to find a map maker. The map maker is this little bug with glasses, and the only way you can find him is by stumbling upon him. Now, they do a little bit of a breadcrumb trail when you start getting in the same area as him. But you can spend 35, 40 minutes, in a new area of the world and not come across him. And sometimes he is gated off by unlockable abilities, double jump and, dash and things like that. Normal abilities you get in those types of games. So your progress is gated by your abilities, and you have no idea where you're going until you find the map maker. But the map maker, he has this little audio, his hum. He hums this little tune that you hear, and it gets louder as you get closer to him. So you can use that audio clue to basically find the map maker. Once you find him, you have to purchase a map from him. And that's where the in-game currency comes into play. Every time you defeat most enemies, they drop Geo. It looks like weird roly-polies, like a roly-poly shell, but it's called Geo, and this is the in-game currency where you collect and collect and collect after you fight a bunch of people. Yeah, you can grind a little bit to get a ton of money, but it's not really necessary for the most part. As you play the game, you'll collect more and more. And money will become less and less of an issue as you play. And that was one of the things that I dropped the game after I did the first time, came back to it after Sean bugged me, and I played for a couple hours. And I was like, man, this isn't really that hard. I died, I respawned, and I realized, it did the one thing in games that I hate. You lose all your inventory and money when you die. And this is the thing that why I haven't finished Shovel Knight yet. This is why I hate Dark Souls games, is because when you die in a game, you have to go to the point where you died and retrieve all your money. And it initially just set me off on hating this game because I died, I lost all my stuff, and I was super, super far. I had no idea where I was because I didn't have the map. I wasn't able to purchase the map from the map maker, so I lost like 2,000 Geo, and in the beginning of the game, that's a lot. And I couldn't buy anything. And I think what happened was I was trying to get back to the main hub world where all the characters are and the shops are to purchase something that I really wanted. I was saving all my money up all this whole time for like an hour or two. And I was like, okay, I'm going to purchase this item and it's going to really help me. So I had all the money, I was trying to get back, and I died. And I had no idea where I was, how I died, or where I died, and how to get back there because I had no map to get back. So I had to just re-explore or just say, screw it, and just forget all that money. This has been like a month ago at this point, so I really don't remember exactly what happened. I think I went back and got it, or maybe I didn't. I can't remember. But I remember I was very pissed off for a while. That's the type of mechanic in games that I really don't like, is when you build up all this stuff, you're trying to get back, you die, and then everything gets taken away from you. It's like wind out of your sails, letting all the hot air out of your balloon. It deflates the enjoyment of the experience of the game. So I really had a hard time picking that game back up. I think I dropped it for like a day or two, and then I finally came back after just breathing a little bit and went, all right, I'm just going to play. And I think I didn't even retrieve it. But as you play through the game, it becomes less and less of an issue. You die more because the enemies do get harder. And I didn't die all that often at the beginning of the game, but later on, some of the bosses, they're tough. But what is really cool, and same thing with Shovel Knight and things like that, is you die, you lose all your stuff, but it still stays there. Same thing with Dark Souls, I know, but it stays where you were. So as long as you can get back to where you were without dying again and pick your stuff back up, you can do this loop of dying over and over and over and over again and not lose anything. And that's what happens with a lot of the bosses in this game. You might die over and over and over and over again on some of these bosses. I know I did. There was a couple bosses that I struggled with really, really hard. And I had my wife Elizabeth watching, and she was like, man, you've been on this for a long time. And I went, I know, it's been like an hour, and I'm just sitting here trying to fight this boss. And I feel like I'm getting close, but I'm not doing enough. And the boss fights are taking a long time. So I stopped for the night. I looked it up online, and I realized, oh, this is a hidden boss that I'm nowhere near powerful enough to actually defeat. So I wasted a couple hours on bosses that I wasn't supposed to be at. But that's kind of the cool thing about these types of games is it opens up so many avenues to explore, and you can get to most places without getting the power-up required, or there's less areas that are requiring power-ups in most of this game. Now, there are definitely some, and you get better and better, and you get more powerful, and you get better attacks, and there's also another mechanic on top of just the normal melee attacks and the power-ups. There is basically these shields or shards, basically. These equipable items that give you boosts and buffs and debuffs, basically. Things that will make you more powerful or less powerful, depending on your play style and how you want to play. A lot of people call these builds and things like that, and I never get into that stuff so much because I think that takes away from a lot of the fun of exploring and learning the game as you play, and I'm not really one for playing games multiple times, so I'm going to get as much as I can out of one playthrough, and if it's an amazing game or a really short game that is designed to be played over and over again, something like Toe Jam and Earl, the Back in the Groove, the new one that came out last year. My favorite game of last year, actually. My game of the year. Go back and listen to that episode if you want to, because it's pretty good, I think. And it's also super long. I think I did 2 parts, maybe? I can't remember. But it was an awesome game that didn't take too long to play through, and I wanted to get my money out of it, and I also had a ton of fun. Unlocking new characters and all this stuff. So playing through it multiple times is something I do very rarely. But that's when people get into builds and things like that. And I go, what is going to give me the most enjoyment? What's going to make this game the most fun? How can I get better power or life or more money out of enemy drops or whatever? So you can mess around with that stuff, and it does help greatly, especially with bosses. I usually equip just like the get more money, have things auto find you, basically. Like you can kill an enemy almost off screen. Their body will drop and all the money will drop all the way down. And there's a lot of valleys and crevices and things like that it takes a long time to traverse the levels. So sometimes money drops and you don't want to go all the way back down to get it. So there's this shard that basically will magnetize the money to you. It will float to you. And so I love that. So I always had that one equipped unless I was on a boss where I wasn't really getting money. And you can equip different ones to make yourself more powerful and blah, blah, blah. You have so many slots available for all these shards. I think there's like 30 shards in the game. And I think I found most of them. I think I found like 25 maybe or something like that. I was definitely missing a few by the time I finished the game, but Hollow Knight, man, I can't say enough good things about that game. There are a few little quirks here and there. There are some difficult bosses. I did not like the losing progress or losing money. Anyways, not progress, but losing money. Trying to get back to the traversal system or the fast travel system, not really the best, but it's pretty fun. And what I liked about it is basically the whole world is inhabited by bugs. This is a bugs world. So there's this big crawly bug that uses these tunneling systems that you find. It kind of like a subterranean subway system type tunnels that this creature uses. And that's how you get the fast travel. You unlock them, you pay a little bit of money, you can save on benches. So that's the way you save, is you just sit down on a bench. But the benches are really hard to find. They're few and far between. So you got to be careful about all that stuff. But the traversal system or fast travel system, there's this bug that you ride on that, acts like a train between all the fast travel points. What I loved about this was that the bug, the way he moves and kind of gallops a little bit, reminded me of our dog Raz, the one that passed away last year, right after my birthday. But I loved Raz, and he looked and just reminded me of him. So I kind of connected with that character a little bit more than probably most people, but I like that. Excuse me. So, Hollow Knight is a fantastic game. I cannot say enough good things about it. If you like that type of gameplay, that style of game, I would highly recommend getting it. It's super cheap now because it came out back in 2017, I believe. And it is something that you can dump a ton of hours in. I think I finished it around 35 hours. And I did most of the stuff. This is the thing that I talked with Sean about after I finished it. I told him, I'm like, dude, I finished it. It only took me 35 hours and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, man, how did you do that? My brother and I we've been playing for about 50 hours and we're nowhere near done or whatever. And I was like, man, really, Sean? Like, it's not that hard. He's like, no, you're really good at this. And I'm like, thank you. But I was like, it wasn't that hard. And so he did some digging and he actually found out that there's some things that I didn't complete in the game. And I go, oh, yeah, there's definitely DLC in the game. That now comes with it. It's kind of an all-in-one package. It's not even DLC, it's updates. I love when games do updates instead of DLC, where they just keep adding to the game for free, and it's all in one. So when you buy it online, years later or something, you don't have to dig through DLC packs and find out what you're missing or whatever. It's just all included in the game. And I love when developers do that. So I completed, I believe it was about 86%, somewhere around there, when I saw the credits and it told me my total completion and everything like that. Oh, that game is so good. I kind of want to go back and play some of it, but I know that now that I've played so many other games in the past month or so since I finished it, I'd be a little bit rusty, so I'd have to spend a little bit of time kind of picking it back up. But that is a fantastic game if you like that type of style of game, Metroidvania or whatever you want to call it, platformer, hack and slash. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It takes skill, but I believe if you really try, you can get through it. Anyone can finish that game if you just stick with it. It might take you 70 hours if you really want to do everything. It might take you 50 hours to complete it, but it's so worth it. It is a fantastic game. So, highly recommend that. So with that, I'm going to take a little bit of a break and we'll come back. I'll play some Hollow Knight music if I can get something good. And then we'll talk more about games after the break. Okay. This is a big one. Half-Life Alyx, the VR game. VR only, actually, which pissed a lot of people off. And I totally understand why people are upset. If I didn't have VR, I would be really bummed if I was a super big Half-Life fan. And I think with this game, I'm a bigger Half-Life fan than I ever have been. When Half-Life 1 came out, I had it on the PC and I only got through, a little bit of it, the very beginning of it, like I talked about before on other episodes. When I played through Half-Life 2, when that came out, I enjoyed it. Certain things stuck with me. We don't talk about Ravenholm, like, of course. I remember playing through that and loving it. I remember playing through, I liked it. I didn't love it. But then when Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and Episode 2 came out, I played through those and I enjoyed them again, but it wasn't really anything spectacular. It was, these are fine. And then as the years went on and Half-Life 3 never came out or Episode 3 never came out, it was a lot of, this kind of sucks. I don't want to, I'm not a big Half-Life fan. But when Black Mesa finally came out, 1.0 release, and I played through that, I really liked that. I had a lot of fun with it. So I was really excited to go into Half-Life Alyx, except for the fact that instead of making a freaking Episode 3 or Half-Life 3 a sequel to the game, Valve made something that no one wanted, which was a prequel. It was like a knife twisting to the sides of everyone who's been waiting for any word from Valve about Half-Life for the last, I don't know, 2 decades almost. So I was kind of upset about that. Like, really, you're going to make a prequel when no one wants that? But hey, I own a Valve Index at this point, so I got the game for free. And there's something about it that I really, really liked. It is not even something, the whole stinking game is really good, not just from a VR perspective, although it does add something that I think every game's going to kind of pull from. That's a VR game at this point. But Half-Life Alyx basically is a prequel between the first Half-Life game and the second Half-Life game. Kind of think about it like Shadows of the Empire, between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. That's basically what this is. You are Alyx Vance before you meet Gordon Freeman, and the world that they set up of City 17 and the Combine coming to Earth. And see, that's one of the things that I've never really understood, even playing through Black Mesa. Maybe I got to play through Half-Life 2 again to kind of get a better idea of this. But they kind of set up the Combine as bad guys, or like they're like a police force or something. But I'm not sure if they're aliens or not aliens. Are they Vortigaunt? Like, I don't know all the ins and outs of Half-Life, because like I said, I've never been a really big Half-Life fan, but I got this game for free. It's a VR game. It's, one of the biggest, it's probably, is the biggest VR game since VR happened. And making it a Half-Life game, making it VR only, it's a huge deal. Even if you don't have VR, it's a really big deal. That's why so many people are pissed off about it. So, you are Alyx Vance before you meet Gordon Freeman, before Gordon Freeman comes to City 17, and you basically are in the middle of the takeover. There's technically a lockdown and all this stuff, throughout the city, and the Combine are this big police force that are rounding up, troublemakers and stuff like that. So I won't give super big spoilers, but I'm going to talk about the game in pretty big detail. And I'm assuming a lot of people still don't have VR, so this is kind of spoilers, yeah, but it's a prequel, so you kind of already know what happens. So you can't really spoil all that much. But holy crap, this game it's absolutely amazing. The way the city is built, you don't spend too much time in the city. You spend times in areas of the city, which I kind of wish you were able to explore a little bit more. It's unfortunately extremely linear. It is almost like hallways, like a lot of VR games are. A lot of VR games don't let you traverse open worlds very often. And this game is kind of that. It is not an open world game. You have a very limited amount of space, but because it's VR, you are limited to walking pretty slowly for the most part, or teleporting if you're a crazy person. I've watched people play VR games and they only do teleport, and I go, I could not even imagine playing a VR. That's what I think a lot of people disregard VR for, is because they watch videos of VR because they've never played it, because it's still expensive. It's still a big thing to get. It's not just like a impulse purchase type of thing. And it's still in, the hardware is still not perfect yet. It's not going to be that way for, I'd say, a good 4-ish years, maybe. But it is, when I watch people play VR and they only use a teleport system, I totally understand why people disregard VR, because it looks like a terrible way to play. And it is. You need to learn how to use stick movements. Make it like a video game. Having room scale is a big thing too. You got to have room scale for some of these games. This game became so much more interesting and enjoyable when you throw it in a room scale environment where you're standing around, turning around, with your body as opposed to a stick. And when you are having firefights, which I'll get to in a second, you are crouching and ducking and avoiding bullets and hiding behind things, not just sitting down. Sitting down is not the way to play a lot of VR games. There are some games in VR, like Subnautica, that I loved. I absolutely love. It's still my gold standard for a VR game, basically, that only has controller support and sitting environment. You can't do any, movements or interactions. You just sit there and play it with a headset strapped to your face. But Alyx is so much more than that when you put it in a room scale environment, which you don't really need all that much room, enough to stand up, sit down, and move side to side just a little bit. Just makes the game so much more enjoyable. So basically, quick plot points, like I said, a little bit of spoilers here and there, but this is the game, basically. You are Alyx, you and your dad get captured. This is the first 5 minutes, roughly, of gameplay. And you have to break out. And so you break out, but your dad still is captured. And your dad's friend, Jeff, no, it's not Jeff, Rodney? I can't remember the guy's name, but he's your earpiece guy. He's your guy in the chair. And he walks you through all this stuff. He gives you these gravity gloves. And this is the big new thing with this game. Instead of the gravity gun that changed the entire course of video game history, basically, with physics and in Half-Life 2 and all that stuff, gravity gloves basically allow you to pick up and pull and retrieve items in the world without having to have nuanced small movements. You are not having to bend over and down and pick stuff up physically in the game, unless you want to, which is still a lot of fun. The whole physics stuff still stands as making Half-Life, but the gravity gloves, basically, you kind of use your hands as a pointer, like a laser pointer almost. And you highlight objects in the world with your hand. So you see a cardboard box off in the distance. And you go, oh, hey. So you kind of point at that and it highlights it. Once it's highlighted, you can kind of pull the trigger and flick your wrist back, kind of like, hey, you're popping some pills or something like that. I don't know why I used that analogy, but I did. So you flick your wrist back and it will pull the object and fling it into the air towards you, and then you can grab and catch it. It's such a small, nuanced, little tiny game mechanic for VR that makes all the difference in the world of picking stuff up, retrieving items, exploring, because you can see some shotgun shells off in the distance and you point to them, you flick your wrist and they'll fly at you and grab them out of the air, and you open up your shotgun, you throw them in, you flick your other wrist that has the shotgun back in so it, racks the shells basically. It's incredible. It's absolutely amazing how this little tiny game mechanic just explodes into something that I think every single game should copy. This should be the way most VR games basically allow you to pick up items, interact with items. And that's one of the big things with VR. A lot of people, like I say, who've never tried VR before is just disregard VR because they don't understand it. They never played around with the mechanics. Yet you'll see someone, in the same sentence, disregard VR, write it off completely, but in the same sentence talk about, playing the same game over and over again for 70 hours straight and loving it, or 1,000 hours, or, 5,000 hours. There's people that disregard VR for stupid reasons, and it doesn't make sense to me. This is another type of video game. It is immersive in a way that no other medium could absolutely wish to be. It is so freaking cool, and it's a life changer, really, for video games, and it's a paradigm shift. Like, I hate that phrase, but it really is. It is something that is so completely new and will change the course of games. I mean, heck, Valve hasn't made a game. I don't care what anyone says, Dota and freaking Artifact are not games. They are, but they're not being on the same level as something like Half-Life. They haven't made a Half-Life game in over a decade, and they finally make VR, and Valve has been behind VR since, day two, basically. You had Oculus first, and then you have Valve pushing Steam VR and the HTC Vive, and then now their own headset. They're in this for the long haul, and they've been in it for the long haul since, about 5 years now. And it is incredible. The environments in the game itself are so beautiful and high def. I hate saying that phrase too because it kind of has lost all meaning. But the definition in the graphics, in the way everything is painted and rendered in the headset is pretty incredible. It is one of the best looking games, one of the best looking games in VR, if not the best. And that's not even the cool thing about it. It's being in this Half-Life world. And like I said, I'm not a big Half-Life fan, and I didn't get into this game for a couple days. I sat down and played through this game over the span of probably about 2 weeks. I would play an hour here, an hour there, And when I first loaded up the game, I was like, man, this is something special. It's Half-Life. It means something when Valve actually finally puts out a game. And this is why I hate when people talk about Half-Life 3 and give the excuse of, well, Valve said that, and this is the thing, an article came out just a little bit ago when Half-Life Alyx launched, or right before it did. And Valve actually finally talked, quote unquote, about Half-Life 3 and why they haven't done anything about it. And from what I've heard, because I haven't read the article myself, I really don't care all that much. Like I said, I'm not that big on Half-Life. But from what I've heard from pretty much everyone is Valve said, the reason why we haven't done Half-Life 3 is because people expect too much from us. And Half-Life 3 needs to be a game changer. It needs to have this and that. It needs to have something like physics, for Half-Life 2 to revolutionize the gaming world. And I think that's one of the stupidest things that anyone could have ever said of why they didn't want to do it. A better thing would be we didn't want to. I would value that way more than we needed to do something incredible. And so we haven't figured that out, so we haven't done it. That's stupid. Because putting out Half-Life 3 or Episode 3 like they said they would have been a billion times better for their image as a company. I value Valve as a company for the most part very little. I think they are run extremely poorly, even though they're a multi-billion-dollar company, and Gabe Newell is a billionaire himself, and Steam is the biggest and best place to buy PC games. I think they're run terribly because they have no infrastructure. It's like a flat surface. Anyone could do anything at any time, and you don't even have to work, or you don't have to come into work, as long as you just say to your boss every 30 days, hey, I need some more time at home. Like, that's not a way to run a company. That's not a way to run a production facility of some sort. So I value them very little as a company, and I think they're terrible. But when they do games, they do them right for the most part. And that's what I do value. So this game, man, it is so freaking cool. There's this level. It's the 5th level. It's called the North Star. And I'm not going to give away tons of information, but basically this level is where I fell in love with this game. Throughout the first 3 chapters or 4 chapters, I had some fun. I was like, this is cool, but this isn't revolutionary other than the gravity guns. But when you get to the North Star, it is... and this is more me and the things that I like. This level connected with me like unlike anything else. It's what I want from VR. Exploration in abandoned areas and nature or alien technology taking over. So just to give a little bit of a spoiler, like I said, you are in this hotel that has been abandoned for who knows how long, and it's been taken over by this alien nature. And there's moss and broken things all over the place, dirty, dingy, just gross stuff. It reminded me a lot of... It reminded me of Not Scary Farm, Halloween Haunt, in a way. And I don't mean any of the... I mean the atmosphere in some mazes that I've been in before, where they do such a good job of theming that you feel like you're there and you know it, even though it's alien to you, even though you've never been there before, you feel like you're in this atmosphere, and it is creepy and awkward and weird and just freaking cool. So, Half-Life Alyx, man, that's where I fell in love with this game. And then afterwards, I basically played all the way through, and the shooting becomes a big part later on in the game. And that's where, I wish it was a little bit more balanced. I think the game has some balancing issues from a mechanic standpoint, because you explore a lot and then you shoot, and it's so far in between. It took me several hours to really get into this game. And shooting isn't a big thing. You have some zombies, running after you, head crabs and stuff, but those are all basic stuff, that you've seen, and it's slow and it's not even methodical. It's just slow and kind of boring for the most part. But when you get into firefights with Combine, when those guys start coming at you and they throw different types of guys at you, guys with zapper billy clubs and guys with big machine guns and stuff, it is so fun. And that's where the room scale does come into play. When you are physically ducking and crouching and hiding behind virtual boxes and walls and crates and pulling your arm up to literally blind fire, and you're physically doing these movements, it's unlike anything in any game, and I cannot fathom how people don't think that's super, super cool. It is. People just need to take a chill pill sometimes with some games. So, oh boy. There's a mod out there that you can play the game without a VR headset, and it's terrible. I mean, it works, and it's more proof of concept than anything else, but this game is designed for VR, and I can't imagine playing through that game without VR and feeling enjoyed. Like, oh, I enjoyed this. I had fun with this. No, it's the worst way to play that game. It's a VR game. You have to play it in VR. Now, did it need to be in VR? No. It didn't need to be made into a VR game, but I am glad that they did because, like I said, Valve is really pushing VR. They need to make big VR games with spectacle, with production values. Because if you don't, and you just put out all these crappy, arcade shooter, shooting galleries and stuff like that, they're a dime a dozen. And that's what people think of when they think of VR right now. They think, that's a shooting gallery. What's the point of that? That sucks. I've done that 1,000 times. It's boring. Yes, it is. There's not very many good shooting gallery games on the VR platforms because they're a dime a dozen. They're usually just Unity thrown together asset, cribs and stuff like that, where they're just being stolen, and copy and pasted into a different, level design or whatever. And there's nothing to them. There's no depth. It's a very shallow experience. But when you have something like Half-Life Alyx, it is a story. It is in depth, and there's mechanics to the gameplay. You are not just running around shooting. You're exploring. You're picking up stuff. You're examining items. And it's super fun. And it's way more in depth than those shooting galleries. So this is a different type of experience. Yes, there have been plenty of story-based VR games and things like that, budget cuts and stuff like that. Those games are incredible. But this takes it above and beyond. It gives it that polish from a quote-unquote AAA studio. They are, I cannot say quote-unquote because they are a AAA studio, publisher, developer. But man, they need to step up their game and release some stuff. This game should not have taken, VR came out in 2016. Commercial VR came out in 2016. Valve put out The Lab in 2016. And it is 2020, and they just put out their first real VR game. So this should have been done a long time ago. And they should have done a lot more since that time. And I don't buy the fact that they needed to make something revolutionary as a good talking point because they did more damage by staying silent. For me anyways, like I said, there are fanboys out there. There are people who just go, oh, they put out a thing. I like them. They're a great company. It's like, no, they're really not. But they do enough stuff that I respect when they do it. But every time in between that, I don't really respect Valve as a company because they're just silent. Silence is key to killing a company for me. Something like Hello Games, with the No Man's Sky stuff, when that first launched, they immediately went radio silent and didn't say anything for months. Instead of just saying, you know what, we should have been better at communicating. We're very sorry, and we're going to devote the next 3 years to making this game what we wanted it to be and what we thought you think it would be. So that's what we're going to do. We're very sorry. Literally that. I just came up with off the top of my head with that. That would have been billions of times better than what they did was this. Silence. They didn't do anything. And Valve did the same thing with Half-Life. Instead of saying, you know what? We said we're going to put out episode 3 and we didn't. We're sorry. We know you guys want a sequel. You want Half-Life 3. We're trying to develop it, but we want it to be revolutionary like Half-Life 2 was. And we're just not there. That's a billion billion times better than nothing. Whenever someone says, hey, where's Half-Life 3? And they just walk off stage. Like, screw that. Come on. Stop being an idiot and just talk. I don't care about, and that PR and all that stuff, obviously lawyers have to be involved. That's why the world sucks sometimes, is because the legalism of all that crap just gets in the way of actual products being made. Or people understand, like, you would have set so many more people at ease instead of pissing them off by just saying, hey, you know what? We've been trying and we want it to be this, but we can't do that yet. We haven't found out a way to do that, so we're just going to shelve it for a while. Then no one would make stupid memes or anything like that. People would just go, all right, cool, and move on with their lives, instead of people who devote themselves to finding out what Half-Life 3 is going to be or when it's going to be released. Are they even working on it? It just would have been, hey, this is a quote that they said they're not ready for it. They're not working on it. They shelved it. Done. So, but play Half-Life Alyx. It's a really good game, and it's definitely made for VR, so you have to have a VR headset. Don't try and mod it. It's not worth it. But I think it's going to be a game changer in the way VR games are made from other studios. They're going to look at Alyx, and they're going to see the gravity gloves and the way the stories are designed and the way the gameplay works. And it's going to change a lot of things, I think. So, I played Half-Life Alyx. I played Hollow Knight. I also played Resident Evil 3. Last year, when the remake of Resident Evil 2 came out, I think I've talked about Resident Evil 2 before, but if I haven't, just a quick kind of get you up to speed on my Resident Evil stuff. When Resident Evil 1 came out, I bought it on the PlayStation. I took it to my friend Andrew's house, and we played it, and I hated it, so I gave it to him. Because I don't like zombies, and I don't like scare games, and I don't like static cameras, and I don't like tank controls. So I bought that game. I let him have it. I never played it until I think Resident Evil 4 came out. No, I didn't even play Resident Evil 4 for years. Because I just don't like those games. I don't like zombie games, I don't like scary games, and I don't like static camera stuff. So when Resident Evil 2 Remake came out, I was very excited because I went, well, this is more of an action game, third-person shooter game. I could play this. Even though it's scary and it's got zombies, it's got the gameplay, the mechanics of the gameplay redesigned in a way that's more familiar, more enjoyable to me, and easier to play and get into. So I played it, and I loved it. Even though I was super scared half of the time, and I really hate zombies and I hate being freaked out, but I played it and I loved it. Then they said, hey, we're going to make a Resident Evil 3 remake, and that just came out. And I went, oh, great, awesome. It's going to be more of the same. Well, yes and no. It is more of the same type of gameplay style, but Resident Evil 3 is nothing like Resident Evil 2. It's got some stuff in it, but I was severely let down by how stupidly short this game is. It took me about 5.5 hours to complete. First time through, never played the game before, never played the original, beat it in about 5.5 hours. And the reason, about 5 hours, I'm looking at my notes here, 5 hours. It's so stupidly short that it should not have been $60. And I was super pissed off because, hey, $60 is a lot to pay for a game right now. And especially if it's about 5 hours long. Yes, you can do multiple playthroughs, but you don't have the same style of playthrough that you did in the first remake, the Resident Evil 2 remake from last year. You don't have multiple characters that you have switch storylines. You have one story where sometimes you play through, or you play most of the game as Jill, and then you have Carlos with some of the worst video game hair I've ever seen, especially in the last 10 years. This is freaking awful. The character model of Carlos looks like a stupid person. I don't know how they made this character model with his hair the way that they did. So I opted for just changing the costumes to the originals and the hairstyle to the original for him, because I was like, I can't deal with this. This is so stupid. But I really don't have much to say about it because it was such a short game. It left little impression on me that it was like, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Unless you really want to play Resident Evil 3, get it on steep discount, which that game should have been $15. That's how much I value that game at, $15 to $20. $20 being the max. It's too short. It's way too short, and there's the way that I was really excited about Nemesis, because I always remember Andrew talking about Nemesis. I watched him play through some of those games, and I've seen Nemesis, but Nemesis is changed completely. He is basically a cutscene, almost. You know, there's a couple boss battles and things, but it's really absolutely not worth $60. And I'm really scorned by Capcom on this one. Like, I'm not going to buy Resident Evil, the next remake. I'm not going to buy it at launch anymore because I don't trust them anymore. I've lost all trust in them with this remake. And that's not to say that they're bad or anything, but like, they should have been honest. They should have talked to people saying, this is a much different game than Resident Evil 2. It is very short. There are 0 different ways that you can play through this game. It is a very linear game, and it's not worth $60. So, kind of pissed about that. I'm going to save a couple things for the next podcast, but I've been playing some Animal Crossing, thanks to my wife. The last episode, we talked about the Animal Crossing. In the Animal Crossing episode, she talked about Animal Crossing. I've never played an Animal Crossing game in my life, and she's been so adamant about it. She's been playing it non-freaking stop since the day it came out that she wanted me to play it. And since Nintendo is so terrible with their online stuff, and I tried adding her account to my Switch and then trying to download and play that game, but we could only play it one at a time and on her account. And I don't like playing her character or her account on my Switch. So we just bought a second copy because that's how terrible Nintendo is at anything online. But I've been playing it. I've been really enjoying it, but I'm doing a little bit at a time. I'm not crazy hardcore with it. I'm not doing everything I can do in a day. I'm just doing what I'm able to do while sitting down, waiting for dinner to finish cooking or something, or having lunch with my wife. We'll have lunch, and then after we finish eating, we both sit down on the couch. We play our Switches. We play Animal Crossing. She comes over to my town, blah, blah, blah. But so far, so good. I'm enjoying it. It's a very relaxing game, and that's what I think is really cool about it. It's a game that you can do daily type of stuff, dailies, if you will, with it, and it's super fun. But I don't have enough time in it to kind of give my super big opinions, but initial thoughts, I really, really enjoy it. So with that, I think I'm going to finish this episode. And I'll probably make another episode talking about the things that I've been doing for the last about week and a half or 2 weeks, which is satisfactory. I got back into that game. So look for that next time. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Ryan Moore, your host. Follow me on Twitter at themadman007, or you can visit my website, gameordie.net, which is where I'm writing my reviews and other things, and I got some stuff that I'm working on, but I'm having fun playing games for a while. You know, it's fun. So thank you very much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.